A few of you guys have asked me to explain the PvP changes, so that's exactly what we're going to do. We had a round of PvP changes not too long ago. Before we look at those, so we had a round of PvP changes not too long ago where things like, you know, Marksman Hunters got nerfed, Marks got changes, Brewmaster got changes, Windwalker got changes, Assassination got a 5% hemotoxin nerf that everyone was memeing about. There's a little bit of a buff to Outlaw, blah, 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 blah. And I honestly thought that was going to be it. That was going to be the end of the changes. You know what I mean? They were done. And this is what, that was how the game was going to be. But I guess Blizzard heard the community feedback, because there's a lot of people in the community that kind of freaked out when Assassination had such crazy representation in the AWC and on the ladder. And it didn't really get any meaningful changes beside the hemotoxin nerf. So we got some rogue nerfs. We got some rogue nerfs. So here are the changes. So they did a few things. Number one, this is a really interesting change. And I unironically think the only reason this change went in, this is what I believe. I don't know this is true, but this is what I believe. I think the only reason we see a Brewmaster buff, because this is very rare where a tank gets nerfed and then compensated. I think the only reason we see this buff, literally, is because of Bruisin. And I think it's, well, I could be wrong, but in my head, when I see this, it's like, okay, well, Bruisin's in the top 8, and this is like, okay, you got a little less screwed from the Fire Breath nerf. Now, Fire Breath does a little bit more damage. I swear that in my head, that's the only reason why I could see this being changed, because in general, I feel like tanks are kind of just like, people don't really... If they get nerfed into Oblivion, people don't care that much. And it's very, very rare you see tanks getting buffed like this. So the only logical explanation in my mind is that it was like, okay, Bruisin got hurt a little bit too much, and we don't want to like completely screw them over in the gauntlet. But I could be wrong about this. This is just like, in my head, what I think. Okay? So we have a Fire Breath damage buff. Didn't he not make the top 8? Oh, did they not make top 8? That's awkward. I thought they did. Okay, well, I guess they didn't make top 8, but still, this is for Bruisin's dream, okay? All right, now Discipline Priest. Discipline Priest got a few changes as well. I think Discipline Priest and Assassination Rogue were kind of like the major outliers in PvP, so it's not a big surprise that they got some changes. Sins of the Many effect is now reduced by 50% in PvP combat. Now, I don't know exactly what this means, but Numbing just told me his Disc Priest friend said it's a 40% damage increase. Sins of the Many is a 40% damage increase, and it got nerfed by 50%. So it went from basically being a 40% damage increase to a 20% damage increase, something like that. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's it. So basically, Disc Priest got some damage nerfs, but at the same time, they actually got Atonement healing buffs. So they said, we want Discipline Priest to contribute more offensively than other healers, but currently its damage is higher than we are comfortable with. On top of a recent bug fix to expiation damage, we feel it's best to bring down Discipline Priest's overall damage while equalizing healing from Atonement, which we feel is in a good spot. So they nerfed the damage, but they compensated the healing by buffing Atonement. I think that's reasonable. I mean, I'd be curious to hear what Discipline Priests have to say about that, but I did feel like Discipline Priests were doing maybe a little bit too much damage. Hopefully they still do good damage, because I think that's kind of the appeal of Disc, is that they are like a strong damage dealer. And I think that makes what makes them fun too. So hopefully they're still good in that regard. And then for Assassination, they did a few different things. And I've had a few people message me from these changes saying that they don't think the changes are going to do anything. I don't know. So we'll go over the changes. The first one is Deathmark duplicated effects now deal 50%, was 70% of normal damage. So it's basically another big nerf to Deathmark. Now what people will tell you, is that Deathmark, a lot of rogues don't even use Deathmark. Like, Deathmark is basically a button you never press, so they can never use Trinket, if that makes sense. It's a constant mind game, where in a game, it's like, at any moment, I could Deathmark you, so you better not Trinket, so you can use your Stone Form, is basically how Deathmark works at high ratings. It's like, yeah, that's basically how it's used. Either people just shove it on CD to get the cooldowns out of the way, or people just have it as a giant, if you ever Trinket, I'm going to Deathmark you, because you can't Stone Form. That's basically, you just don't have a Trinket against rogues. But now, I would argue that now you're not as afraid to Trinket, and if they do Deathmark you, it shouldn't be so bad, hopefully. So hopefully this change actually does something. They also made 2 changes here. Mind numbing poison or numbing poison effectiveness now reduced by 47%, was 33% in PvP combat, and numbing poison shiv effect reduced by 52%, was 40% in PvP combat. I don't know how I feel about this. I think this is better than nothing. I personally am still of the camp that I really think the cast time reduction / haste reduction effects are just bad for the game. That's what I think. Like I don't think anything should be lowering your haste. Like if these effects all only lowered your cast speed, I would be okay with that. But lowering your haste, I think is just it's not good. It reminds me of like there's another toxic effect, just to give you an idea that here's something that I think is good that is gone, is the old frost armor on mage. The old frost armor, if you were a melee and you attacked into it, it just made you attack slower. Which is a bad feeling, right? I think just lowering and deleting your secondary stats with numbing poison is just really, really silly. Especially because numbing poison right now doesn't require any kind of decision. You just automatically have all your poisons as Assassination Rogue. Before, if you had to like at least make a trade, like you couldn't use wound or something, then or you couldn't use deadly, then it was a lot more reasonable. But I wish this effect was just deleted, to be honest with you. I don't like. I'm fine with it being a cast time reduction, but I really hate that it reduces your haste. So it's getting further nerfed. We'll see what that does. And then apparently Garrote has just been bugged to do more damage. Like Garrote is supposed to be nerfed in PvP, but improved Garrote was not nerfed. So improved Garrote fixed a bug that prevented improved Garrote's PvP multiplier from applying. Damage bonus will once again match the tooltip value of 30%, base 50% in PvP combat. So I guess it was doing like 20% too much damage in PvP, improved Garrote randomly. So that's a bit weird, but there you go. Bug fixed on the Assassination Rogue. I really believe, like, I'm kind of, my opinion of Assassination Rogues is if numbing poison just was deleted or like built differently, then I think rogues actually right now are in an okay spot. I know people will probably disagree with me, but I think there's other classes too, like warriors are very close. Warriors are very close, and sub rogue as well. So I think if anything, if assassination gets taken down a notch, we're just going to see a lot more subtlety rogues because it's super duper strong, and that'll be the next thing people probably complain about with rogues is subtlety. So maybe we have a new king there, but I still think assassination is going to be viable. I still think assassination is going to be strong, but a little bit more reasonable. So overall, really, really good changes, and I think this sets up like you know, the next couple weeks in the season really nicely. And I actually personally right now, besides maybe sub rogue, don't hate me rogues. Besides maybe sub rogues, I can't really think of like anything that's a super outlier. I think Arms Warrior is close, but yeah.